contractual wage obligations, and meeting police staffing requirements are the primary drivers for the increase. Although in the recommended budget, we are reducing overall debt, we plan to issue $5.4 million in new bonds for various capital projects. Those projects include Griswold and Hubbard Schools HVAC upgrades, Berlin High School track resurfacing, Town Hall roof replacement, police station renovations, and fixing police radio coverage gaps. With our goal to substantially reduce debt, this is the first time in 4 years that we're adding new debt. The Board of Finance approved a 2.75% Board of Education operations budget increase to the BOE requested 6.39% increase. Historical budget performance supports that a 2.75% increase is more than sufficient. In the last 6 completed years, the BOE has asked for an average 4.7% increase, receiving an average increase of 2.5%. And in every year, there were surplus funds available to reallocate or carry forward. Throughout those years, the Board of Education was able to add more staff and introduce new programs. I'll have some charts to share at the end of the presentations with you regarding some of these statistics. Education in Berlin has been more than adequately funded with annual budget increases despite a decline in student enrollment. Berlin's per pupil expenditure remains the highest in comparison to six similar nearby towns. Those towns include Glastonbury, Newington, Farmington, Wethersfield, Rocky Hill, and Cromwell. The town expects $1.8 million in additional tax revenue from real growth in the grant list. As we continue to bring in more businesses, complete some of our major building projects, and tax abatements drop off, grant list tax revenues will continue to grow. I want to thank all town and Board of Education officials and managers for their hard work in preparing the budget. Finally, I want to thank the Board of Finance members for cooperatively working together to produce a solid budget. I believe we put forward a fiscally responsible budget that continues to provide the high quality of services that our citizens expect. With that, I'll turn it over to the town manager to discuss the town budget. Arosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm Arosh Javik from a town manager. Mr. Chair, you actually took a lot of my talking points, so I'll make this very quick. It's a good one. So this is what you're going to, or what you can expect today. We'll talk about the overall budget, then talk about the how we're going to pay for it, general government budget, and then Julia will talk about the Board of Education budget. So generally, the overall strategy, when we put a budget together, there are 4 pillars that we consider. This is probably true for any town. Public safety is one of the top priorities. It's not the PD alone. Fire, building safety, animal control, anything to keep our town community safe. Education, one of the primary reasons why people move into a town because of the quality of the schools. So we consider that. Infrastructure, very simple, roads, bridges, all of the town buildings, trails and everything else that we need to maintain, sidewalks. And culture and recreation, all the fun stuff, anything from libraries, shops and restaurants, economic development to get people here, trails that we have outside, parks and rec activities, etc. So as we put our priorities together, we consider those 4 elements as important items to the town. This year's priorities are not any different. In infrastructure, some of these were touched upon by Mr. Bordenaro. We are planning to complete the other 2 schools for the HVAC. We started with Willard. We're going to complete the other 2 this beginning next year. It's in the next year's budget, the debt service for that. Police station renovation is underway. Berlin High School courtyard, some of these items that are in red, this is what Sal referred to before. We would be funding them from at the year end with any savings that we may have. Berlin High School track, the town hall roof, it's time to get that fixed. Sage Park parking lot, and in public safety, we had started to increase the police department staff last year from 42 to 46. That number is in here to additional staff. School vans, Berlin High School, fire suppression system to protect the IT equipment. School cameras, Timberland bridges, that's another safety issue that we have to address. And then, of course, the economic development activities, mostly to do with the TOD, transit-oriented development in the downtown area, the Steel Boulevard, Farmington Avenue, Berlin Turnpike residential units that are coming along. And then we try to come up with some funds as matching funds for grants, applications. These things are 10, 20 cents on the dollar that we invest, and we get a good return on that. So those are the priorities for 2025. Once we put the budget together and we send it to the Board of Finance, that was a $7.2 million increase, or about 7.2%. The Board of Finance worked with the town to make some adjustments, and I'll very quickly hit some of these adjustments that were made, some to the expenses and others some revenue adjustments. Board of Educational budget was reduced by 1.8 for an overall increase of 2.75. Capital items, we had requested around 1.3. The plan is again at the end of fiscal year 2024, look at any surpluses and fund that. Debt service for new items that we just talked about, the PD renovation, HVAC for Hubbard and Griswold, Berlin High School track, PD radios, town hall roof. The principal payments for that, they were deferred until fiscal 2026 and not spend it in fiscal 2025. And we also reduced the match for the state grant, townwide department in general fund, $150,000. These are to keep some matching funds for the grants, but not the total 400. We reduced it by 150. The other item was the Public Building Commission. Town Council refers public building projects to the Town Public Building Commission, and they need certain funds to hire consultants. We reduced that amount by 75. And I forgot to mention the animal control. We had requested to make one of these positions full-time, and that was tabled as well. Certain revenue adjustments, starting with the municipal revenue grant. This is a revenue cap of 2.5% the state has imposed. If you go above that or inflation, you lose the ability to get those funds. So by reducing our overall expenditures, we were able to count that in our revenue formula. Interest income assumption was changed, again upwards, because the market's doing well and interest rates are around 5%, and we anticipate those rates to hold at least until the middle of the year. We had also reduced the VNA, Visiting Nurses Association revenues, from $700,000 in '24 to $350,000. We feel we can be at $450,000, so move that up. And the building inspection fees that we get, they are actually tracking well. More buildings are coming up down on the Turnpike, other apartments, so we feel we can actually collect more fees than what we had budgeted. And then there were some lease revenue assumptions that we adjusted north to $50,000 more. So this is what it looks like, the proposed budget. It's an overall increase of 3.22%. Mill rate goes from 29.56 to 30.21, or 0.65 increase. The slice of the pie, as you can see, the Board of Ed is around 51%. General government, that includes the town as well as the PD, is around 34. Long-term liabilities, these are debt service payments, that we have to pay each year for the fiscal 2025. The total debt amount has come down from over 120 million down to 56 or so. We're doing great on that. And there are certain expenses that the town incurs on behalf of the Board of Ed, such as facilities, grounds maintenance, nursing, security, crossing guards, insurance, electricity, etc. So that's another 5% or so, and there's a small sliver for some transfers and capital. So overall, Board of Ed increase of 1.397 or 2.75. The town 1,812 or 3.72. Overall increase of 3.22. Just want to give you a snapshot of where we have been the last 5 years or so. This is on average, the Board of Ed increases have been around slightly above 3.13. All other, which is the general town and police, around 1.92. Total around 2.5%, and average, the mill rate has gone up around 0.44. A comment on the mill rate, if you take the average home price of Berlin, which is around $345, the increase would be about $157 a year, or you can say 13 bucks a month or 43 cents a day. So that's just to give you a translation of how that would affect the mill rate. Obviously, some folks would pay more, others would pay less. The picture of the grand list, town of Berlin grand list grew up by 2.11%, 2.93 billion. That growth gave us an additional 1.8 million in additional tax revenues. Hence, one of the reasons we continue to work on economic development. Any growth can either slow down or maintain the increase in taxes for everybody else. And the components of the growth, 0.8 in real estate, personal property grew by 21.8%, and motor vehicles actually came down. If you recall, soon after the pandemic, the used car values went up significantly. It's beginning to come down, went down a negative 5.2%. These are some of the major revenue drivers. How did that happen? Major surprises here. Most of our revenues come from taxes, 87% from taxes. Berlin has a really good tax collection rate of 99.3%, and we tend to actually collect more in the following years. 6.1 million from educational cost sharing grant. Interest income has been going up because of the favorable interest rate, almost close to 2 million. And educational, non-educational state grant, small amount, 396. We also appropriated close to $1 million, 952,000 from fund balance, previous year's savings, largely a $300,000 contingency, and to fund the police former old pension that we have, which is no longer there, over 650,000. And then we also needed to reduce the amount of money that we won't be getting from the state as a result of the motor vehicle cap. That is as a result of the mill rate going down below the 32.46 last year. Soon after the pandemic, the state wanted to help the residents, and they reimbursed the town 32 point, if the mill rate was higher than that, they reimbursed the town a certain amount of money, a lot of towns, and if mill rate goes down, we don't get that. So that is built into the budget as well. So general government increases, this is the $1.8 million that we talk about, the overall increase. A large portion of that comes from staffing related matters. We mentioned the 4 police officers. Last year, the council and the board authorized the PD to go ahead and hire. We were having a challenge with recruiting police officers. And with the introduction of the police pension, we've been able to successfully fill those positions, and the 4 police officer salaries are in there. We also have another component, contractual increases related to all salaries, union and non-union, which is about 543, I'm sorry. And then new staffing, about 230. And that has to do with an investment that we are making in social services by combining 2 part-time and some stipend monies to serve more children as well as adults in the community. Trying to hire a part-time custodian to help out with vacations and when people are out and cover most of the buildings that we have. Early voting related expenses for the registrar for early voting, and then we have some money put aside for succession planning because quite a few people planning to retire and move on. On the operations, $675,000 or so, largely due to contractual increases and the cost of materials going up, both for public building operations and school buildings. Computer support is townwide, some of them from additional features, others are general townwide increases related to technology. Trash removal, $50,000. And fire department protective clothing, it's a mandate from the state that we have built into the budget. And then the police department maintenance of certain equipment and vehicle parts have been going up each year due to inflation. Capital is a small amount to replace investment in Timberland as well as a state grant match that we talked about before. The pension is actually becomes a small because the closed pension actually goes down and the other one goes up 130, net of a 42. And the debt service actually goes down as a result of debt payments from the old debt offsets what we are borrowing this year. Berlin Water Control, this is an enterprise fund, which means the people who buy the water, pay for it. It does not affect your taxes or the mill rate. They don't have a lot of changes this year except for in staffing, but they are planning to hire a consulting to do a assessment of the water system itself. This is an audit requirement to actually understand the value, the cost of the Berlin water and sewer system. In addition to that, the largest one is the lamentation tank, corrosion of a tank that we have that needs to get replaced or painted. But you can't just disconnect the tank. We have to get a temporary Meriden water line connection, so that's built into the budget. And then Kensington Road water line extension and a Berlin Turnpike pump station repairs that have to be addressed. Again, this is Berlin Water Control only, does not include anything to do with Kensington or Worthington fire districts. Next, I will have Julia come in and discuss the Board of Ed budget as to the next steps and timeline. Immediately following this meeting, the Board of Finance will actually take a vote to recommend the general government budget to the town council. The council meets on April 3rd, and there are 3 options for the council. Recommend the budget as is, goes to referendum. They can recommend the budget with reductions and goes to the referendum straight away. And if they reject it, it calls for a joint meeting of the Board of Finance and the council. With that, I will turn it over to Julia for the Board of Ed budget.
All right, hello, good evening, everyone. Hello to the Board of Finance. I see a lot of town councilors here in the audience and everyone else who's here. and those on Zoom. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the fiscal year 24-25 board adopted budget. Just for some context, the board has not met since the Board of Finance voted on the 2.75. So we've met as a committee, the Finance and Operation Committee, to discuss potential cuts, but nothing has been voted on as a board, so I just want to start out with that. So as a Board of Education, we believe in the superintendent's goals as well to provide a quality education, prepare students for multiple options and opportunities, maintain favorable class sizes and course offerings, and consistent support for technology and commitment to a safe learning environment. And this is what parents believe and trust and want from the Board of Education. I don't think any parent would argue that. And then we have our mission and core values, which is purpose, passion, and pride. And then our beliefs about learning, that all students learn when they feel safe, included, respected, and valued by their community. We must believe in, challenge, and support all students to reach their personal goals and our high expectations. Learning is enhanced by a cycle that includes goal setting, practice, feedback, and reflection. And students are empowered and engaged by choice and authentic learning experiences. And we're able to achieve all of that through the vision of the graduate. And this is really what grounds the budget process. So looking at the goals, the vision, and then looking at what is right in Berlin Public Schools. There's a lot to celebrate, and there's a lot that the district administration, the superintendent and his team, all of the teachers and the paras and the custodians and the food service workers have been able to achieve and accomplish because of our budget, because of our funding. But just a few things, I'm not going to read through all of them, but there are a lot of things to highlight about all the wonderful things that Berlin Public Schools is doing to provide for the kids. Here's just another slide. It talks about athletics, clubs, technology, programming, people. Because of people and programming, all of this is possible on both sides. So these are additional student achievements and highlights. And again, a well-funded school district is able to achieve this. We wouldn't be able to achieve this without the funding we've received. Because to get to that point, you need people and programs. So I'm going to get into the budget. So this was the proposed budget. This was the board adopted budget at 6.39%. And this is what, hang on, yes. So I think this is a better slide to represent what the Board of Education proposed, adopted. Well, the superintendent proposed a 6.39. The board voted to adopt the 6.39. We sent that to the Board of Finance, and we have, the Board of Finance has voted for a 2.75% increase. So I just want to bring your attention to a few things here on the stacked bar graph. If you look at the stacked bar graph on the left and then look at it on the right. So the yellow, the supplies, equipment, and all other expenditures, that's been completely reduced, wiped out. It's pretty much eliminated. We've never had equipment funded, and we have used end-of-year funds, the surplus, the small surplus that we have left, to do that. And then that has contributed to all the great things that we just highlighted, the people, the programs, and our achievements. So the Board of Ed is, in fact, separate from the town as outlined in Connecticut General Statute 10-222 and the duties of a Board of Ed in 10-220. And the Board of Education has to come together as an entity and take the superintendent's proposed budget, and we work we spend many hours going through it and determining what is going to be what's best to continue to drive the district forward, to continue to provide the quality of education that is expected by the parents, the young parents who have moved to town to educate their kids in this town because of the expectations and the reputation. And then from there, the Board of Education sits and votes, and that's what we voted on. That was our majority vote, the 6.39%. I understand at the end of this presentation, there are in fact a number of slides which Mr. Bornero did mention. He brought up in his introduction, and I just think it's important if you go towards the end, the last 3 pages, it talks that we have had a surplus year over year, starting in fiscal year 17 to 18 through fiscal year 22 to 23. So, I think it's important to draw your attention to that yellow on the left-hand side, looking at it on the right-hand side. We've been able to fund technology without even having it as a line item because of the surplus. I think another aspect is we as a board, though we are a separate entity from the town council and the Board of Finance, we're criticized for having a 1% to 2% surplus. But last year, the town had approximately 10% surplus. No one's talking about that. Every year I get up here and I say, we are not being held to the same expectation as the town. The town has a much more significant surplus than the board, but we're getting criticized for having this small surplus that we're putting back into the education to make sure the kids are getting the best possible education that can be provided. So as a board, as the separate entity, we are going through it and really truly looking at what does the district need to be driven forward. So we don't have to agree. We can let the people decide at referendum. Well, it goes to town council next. But this is truly a democratic process where the Board of Ed sets what we believe is best. The Board of Finance votes on what they believe is best. Then the town council, then the parents, the families, the voters of Berlin. So I started out saying that these are not approved by the board. This is where the Finance and Operation Committee landed yesterday morning when we had a subcommittee meeting at 7 a.m. So we are looking to bring us from the 6.39% down to the 2.75%. We are looking at reducing the operational budget by 2 administrators, 4 teachers, 1.5 paraprofessionals, and a half unaffiliated. That would be someone who's not part of a union. People and programs make up our operating budget. That is about 80% of our budget. So we're going to have to also look at reducing programming, freshman sports, clubs, ESS at the middle school, and middle school sports. And then all other expenditures, benefits, contracted services, equipment, supplies, transportation, tuition, and utilities. We understand that if we do have a student who is in fact outplaced and we don't have the money, we can go to the town and the town does have to provide it. So that is something that we may have to do for a special education outplacement. When we're looking at this budget and we're looking at our increase, we need to take into account a few key things. Inflation, everyone is talking about inflation. That is a key driver to everyone's personal financial budgets at this current time. ESSER has run out, ESSER is over. That's the end of ESSER due to COVID, and our choice money has also decreased. We just talked about implications, and I'm just going to move along to this slide. So this is 31 in your packet. You can see here that this shows no more ESSER, less choice, inflation, then the 2.75. This is where we are in fact cutting from. You can see the percent difference. And you know, I just wish that there was more trust between the Board of Education, the Board of Finance. I really wish there was the same level that the town receives. It's disheartening because we make the choices for children. We are sitting here making choices for kids who can't go out and vote. Parents are trusting us to make choices so we can provide the best quality education. That's why people move to this town. Parents don't move to this town and say, I want a subpar education for my kids. I want to send my kids to a school where I don't know if they'll be safe. I want mediocre programmings and the lowest paid possible teachers. That's not what parents typically want, but I think that if you look at our approved budget from 22 to 23, which is at the end of the slideshow, I'm not going to get into it. And if you look at our surplus and compare it to the towns and then see that we have funded things that were not in our budget, we are doing what's right and best for the students of Berlin Public Schools. And at the end of the day, that is why the Board of Education is separate, outlined in Connecticut General Statute, and that's why we are a totally separate entity. So if you have questions and comments, we'll be here. Here's a QR code for the full Board of Education budget, line by line, and thank you for letting me present this evening.
Thank you, Julia. Okay. So in last year's budget presentation, Julia and the superintendent presented this chart here that said if they didn't get the complete 5.84% increase, that they would have to make some cuts. So if you, the column that has the blue arrow is to around 3.5%, that you would have to make all those cuts. But from our understanding, no cuts were made, okay? And actually staff was added. So my point is I don't have a problem with budget surplus. What I see is that these budgets are overstated. Proposed budgets are normally overstated, and you can see it in the data that I'm going to present to you. Okay? But we're trying to get information regarding these cuts, and we got limited information. And second of all, you added staff, so really you didn't make any cuts. FY23 is the last completed year for the Board of Education. In that year, you asked for a 4.67% increase. You got an approved budget of 2.5%. Okay, you did have some surplus. You had some
money back to the taxpayers because we do have capital expenditures. Cost a lot of money. We have a lot of infrastructure in this town that we have to support. That money goes directly back in. As Sal indicated before, we took $1.38 million out of the capital budget. We did that in anticipation that we will have enough surplus to cover that. It's not that we're not going to spend that $1.38 million, but we don't want to put it into the budget and tax you on it only to have it end up at the end and you don't have it sitting in your wallet. So we need to be very sensitive to that. We also need to be very sensitive to everybody in the town, every demographic group. And that means the seniors, too. This town is made up of a tremendous amount of seniors. We have something like 50% or more of people that are over 50, 55 years of age. A lot of them on fixed incomes, too. I know me personally, I'm retired. I've been retired for 10 years. I have no COLA in my pension. I'm fortunate to have a pension. I have not had an increase in 10 years in the money that I take home every month. That's a lot of people in our demographic here, a lot of seniors and some. So we need to balance that across everybody and come up with what we think is fair and equitable to all these people. It's a difficult decision. It's not targeted to anyone specifically by saying we don't trust what you're doing, whatever. We figure out what we think we can afford as a town, what we think is fair and equitable to everybody, and that's what we do. Thank you.
Anybody else from the group? Okay. Okay. All right, so we're going to start the audience of citizens. I want to limit it to 3 minutes, but since there's not a lot of people here, we could probably go a little more.
I think most,
Is that Mike?
I don't necessarily have a lot to say, but what I have to say is mostly poignant. Cornell Boudria, 115 Skinner Road. I'm here today to advocate for increased funding for the Board of Education. The board approved an increase of 6.39%, I believe. BOF came back with 2.75. They're not even meeting the BOE halfway. I mean, based on budget presentations as it is, contractual obligations are 4.2%. So you're not even meeting that. Proposal on the screen just now from the board president suggests that there's going to be sizable cuts to programs and staff. I'm just here to advocate for the schools and appeal to the BOF, add more money back into the school budget, meet them halfway, get as close to 4.2% as you can get. That way we don't have to cut staff and programs. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dave Francolangia, 232 Butternut Lane. You know, listening to this, I'm an educator. I'm the athletic director here in town, but I also live here. I'm a single parent of 2 boys that go here as well. To hear the conversations going back and forth, to hear other people speak around town, not just here, but as a political figurehead, with athletics being prominent in our district, people talk to me a lot about a variety of things. I'm a punching bag in many ways in my job, right? Everybody's gonna be a star athlete. It's my job to mediate. It's my job to take a look at situations and problems and try to come to the middle and median. My wish, even being a single parent, I understand taxes are going to increase. I do understand my parents and relatives are on a fixed income as well. So I understand all that. And I do appreciate all the work that you've done, and Mayor Mark and all the constituents. Bringing business to our town is absolutely huge. So I congratulate you, and I hope we continue to do that. But there's got to be something else. People come to Berlin for the school system. They come to Berlin because of our school system, not because of the beautiful pizza restaurants that we have, okay? And they're good. But people come here. The work that I see in the classrooms at all schools, because not only am I the athletic director, I'm also health and wellness K through 12. So I'm in all the schools. I see the kids' smiles when they're working with their teachers. What I'm asking is for you guys to come together before the next meeting and have another conversation about what can be done. We're all in this together. That's what I'm asking for. And I hope you take my words to heart. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, it's anybody.
It's for the whole thing.
Yeah, it's,
All right, I just want to make sure. I'm
could-
sorry, we just sort of
could you
flew
speak
in.
closer to the mic so?
All right, I can speak as close as you want. Hi. And, all right, so I'll cut it down. It's been a long day, so I do apologize. I have a sort of a bent sense of humor. But I just want to talk to you guys about the Registrar of Voters and all the work that we've been putting in. And I know that we've been batted around a lot of times between Board of Finance and the Town Council. Back to you guys again. And I understand that any sort of consideration you're giving for a raise with all the work and the demands that early voting has brought us is still being discussed or decided or described as a stipend. I just want you to understand that Christy and I, the other registrar, we do not align ourselves with the idea of a stipend. And this is based on the history of stipends with the registrars. For those of you who do not know, the registrars were promised a stipend 2 years ago for all the work that we poured into the redistricting when the state decided to realign the voter maps and redistrict the town. And we literally spent the entire spring and summer trying to satisfy it. We had public hearings and such. And as a reward, because we had leftovers and we've been very frugal with our budget for the town. As a reward, we were to draw a stipend. That stipend has never been realized, although it was promised to us. So that being said and done, coming forward with that in our minds, we now hear talks of stipends again. The hours that we are putting in are more aligning with full-time hours than part-time hours. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, there's no data to support that. How do we know what hours you really work? Well, let me tell you, my husband knows the hours I work, and so do I, and so do a lot of other people in town. And they're running closer to 35 hours a week than they are to the normal 20 that we would sometimes, that we would put in on the average. So I just wanted to reiterate that a stipend is not something that we align with. It's not something that we support. And so we're looking for a salary increase at this point, as opposed to a stipend. There was another thing that I wanted to correct that was said at one of the other public hearings, and that was that the registrars automatically get a bump in pay of $1,000 every January. This is not true. This bump of pay is $1,000 every 2 years. So we get $500 added to our salary every year, regardless of the workload that we carry. So I wanted to correct that. And I do know that a lot of people have said that when they go to surrounding areas or surrounding towns that we're the highest paid registrars. We are not the highest paid. And we find a lot of other registrars, especially with early voting and the demands of early voting, are all finding themselves in the same struggle with their town. They like their job, they like doing their job, but they need to be compensated for their job. It's all about an equity pay for their job. So I really wish you would consider that as you move forward with the budget. We understand the obstacles you have, but we also understand the workload that we do and the trouble this town could be in if we don't do it right. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Donna Beauvais, 85 Steepleview Drive. One of my biggest concerns is the way that we've budgeted capital. I know, we had a very high debt, and I give you and the town council credit for bringing that debt down. And I know your goal is to bring it back further so we hit some benchmarks that we want to. But other towns seem to include some maintenance capital in their taxable budget. And I think we have to get to a point at some time that you're going to include. I realize you're putting new debt on the books. I'm talking about maintenance capital, the $1.3 million that you've pulled out. You're gonna have to spend some money with this stuff, because if we continue defer, it only gets bigger. And in fact, if you look at your list, there's $6 million that was requested from the town departments this year. You were gonna fund $1.3 million. I was very hopeful that that would have been included so that we can get a running start and start including some capital in our budget. And I'm disappointed that now it's been taken out. So I ask you to reconsider that. You're trying to, I think, operate as a business, run it, look at things, understand how things work, look at the past, understand how that may impact the future. But if you continue doing this every year and only counting on your surplus, which is never big enough really to do what we need to do for capital, we're never going to do another investment in this town. And maybe that's the plan. But boy, I hope we could have a vision to offer this town some other things coming down the pike. There is a study, obviously, for a community and senior center being done right now, once again. But if you don't have a vision for incorporating some maintenance, I can't believe that there's ever a vision for you to include capital items to move this town forward. Again, I appreciate all the work that's been done, but you have to start doing this at some point. And please start doing it this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Sarah Lepovsky, 170 Tree Hill Road. I just have 3 quick points. One is that both last year and this year, I've sensed a lot of frustration, both passively and aggressively, and I really want to encourage both the Board of Education and the Board of Finance to come to some resolution and some peace in this whole experience so that we can all work together much more proactively and professionally. I saw that a lot tonight, and it was a bit disheartening to see that. The second point is that we would expect, as citizens, as parents, and as community members, we would expect the Board of Education to respect and honor the budget that is set, regardless of what the percentage is and regardless of what they think the percentage should be. And in doing so, they are being fiscally responsible. And when they stick within the budget that has been set forth, they are getting penalized for being creative or for finding thoughtful ways to honor their budget. I hope that that comes to an end. I hope we can move past that and appreciate that they're respecting the budget rather than using it as a tactic to assuming that they are sandbagging their budget in the coming year. 3, I firmly believe that the increase that was set forth on this page should be consistent between the Board of Education and the government from a percentage perspective. No questions asked. If you're increasing the general government by 3.7, then you should increase the Board of Education by 3.7. And finally, I work in finance too, and I truly understand how difficult this process is. However, I think we need to find a balance between the spreadsheet exercise and the realities of what is going on in our community, both within education, infrastructure, and other areas, safety, and so on. We just need to step back from the spreadsheet a little bit and look at the realities of what's going on in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So may I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, if somebody wants to say the rule?
You guys hear me? Thank you. Julia and Brian, on this new graphic, the 3.05 that you guys have up there, is that the total to keep the jobs? On page 26. Kevin, what is the difference between 2.75 and 3.1 financially, money-wise? Can you just go to the mic, please?
If you look at the bottom of the stacked bar, it's a decrease of negative 0.58, and that's the only way we were able to keep the stacked bar and
My
represent that.
question is, if we gave you 3.1%, would you be able to keep all the jobs that you guys are saying that you guys are going to cut?
No, because our contractual obligations alone are at 4.2%.
No.
Wait.
With the new math, you guys, all right, this graphic right here, right? Yes. You guys are
Yes.
saying that 3.05 or is it 3.5 out of 2.75? Like, what exactly is the math?
When you look at the 3.05,
Yep.
that would not cover the new staff. If you go back to the first bar graph,
4.2.
what that 3.05 represents is what the new one would be minus the staff that we're cutting now. So there's two. That goes back to where it says 2 administrators, 4 teaching staff. So if you go back to there's banners, the 24.
This one?
Oh,
No.
that comes after, that's
It's
slide
after.
27.
Right here. 27. So when you're looking at that on the second stack bar, Raul,
Yeah.
that's without having these positions at 3.05. That's without the 2 administrators, that's without the 4 teachers, the 1.5 paraprofessionals and the 0.5 unaffiliated.
So 3.1 of the original 4.2, what would that get you?
I couldn't, I'm not,
So
I'm
the
not,
4.2, let's go back to the original.
Okay.
4.2, right, contractuals? If you got 3.1, how much would that be? Like, what would you be able to save or do with that 3.1?
If you're going from 3.1 to 2.75, and the new budget is 52 million, right? So I'd have to do the math in my head to see, if that's 230.
That's why we have Kevin.
Yeah, for 230,000 or so, to speak to, you'd have to look at what those positions are. There's 568,000. That's not going to cover all those positions at that, the 0.3
Okay.
that you're saying increase, roughly 0.3%. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, no, it doesn't, 2,000, right, yeah, right. I said it's about half, a little less than half. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from Board of Finance? Anyone else?
I think we should maybe rethink the amount of the 2.75 after the meeting, yeah.
Okay. All right, so with that, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. So moved. Thank you, everyone.